Back in the holding room, Michael's calm demeanor slowly began to crack. He wasn't just worried about his own fate. He knew what would happen if the investigation went public. If Officer Thompson wasn't exposed for the corruption that ran through this department, it would continue, unchecked. But how could he fight this from behind bars? How could he expose the truth when he was the one in chains? The door to the interrogation room creaked open, and Thompson stepped in, his face tight with frustration. Michael met his gaze, steady and unflinching. "You know who I am, don't you?" Michael asked, his voice low but clear. Thompson hesitated, and for the first time, doubt flickered in his eyes. "I don't think you fully understand what you've done," Michael added, his words cutting through the charged silence. The air was thick with an unspoken challenge, and the stakes had never felt higher. Jenkins, standing just outside the door, felt the tension in the air too. He couldn't explain it, but something was about to break, something big, something that would change everything. He wasn't sure if he was ready for it, but he knew he couldn't turn back now. It was time for the truth to come to light. Just as Michael and Thompson stood in that charged silence, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. Jenkins, who had been anxiously listening, suddenly froze. He hadn't expected to hear anyone else coming, certainly not her asterisk. Detective Laura Davis, a sharp, no-nonsense officer known for her impeccable track record, stepped into view. The room went still as she approached the door, her eyes scanning the faces of both men. There was something in her gaze, something that immediately shifted the energy in the room. She wasn't just another officer, she was a part of the investigation Michael was leading. And she wasn't just any detective, she was his sister. Her arrival wasn't a coincidence. Jenkins had heard whispers that she had been growing suspicious of the department's ties to the case, and now here she was, standing just a few feet from a man she'd sworn to protect in one breath and expose in the next. Laura's eyes locked with Michael's, and for a brief moment he saw something that sent a chill through him. Uncertainty. "Laura," Michael said softly, not bothering to mask the surprise in his voice. She hesitated, then finally spoke, her tone colder than usual. "You need to get out of here, now." Michael's heart pounded as he tried to process her words. "What are you talking about? You're here to help, right?" Laura stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's no time to explain. They know you're part of the investigation. It's already too late." Thompson's eyes darted between them, confusion and suspicion written all over his face. What the hell is going on here? Before anyone could answer, the sound of muffled voices outside the room grew louder. Laura's gaze flicked nervously toward the door and then back to Michael. "You're in more danger than you realize," she whispered urgently. "This isn't just about you. It's about all of us. There's someone else pulling the strings in this department, someone bigger than Thompson, someone who will do anything to keep you from exposing the truth." Michael's pulse quickened. The pieces he'd been gathering for months were starting to fall into place, but now the danger had escalated. This wasn't just about a corrupt cop, it was about an entire network. Someone powerful enough to manipulate the situation and ensure the truth never saw the light of day. Thompson took a step forward, clearly frustrated. "What's going on here?" "You two know something. Tell me. Laura's eyes locked onto Thompson's, and for the first time, her expression softened, as if she regretted what was coming next. "You've already made your move, Thompson," she said quietly. "But the game has just changed." Jenkins, standing in the hallway, had heard enough. He knew that whatever was happening, it was bigger than he could have imagined. He wasn't just a bystander anymore. He was part of something that had already gone too far. His gut told him there was no turning back. The tension in the room had reached a breaking point, and everything seemed to hang in the balance. Michael's thoughts raced. Laura's warning echoed in his mind, but there was no time to process it. He had to act, and fast. "Listen to me," Michael said, his voice sharp with urgency. "We're not walking out of here until we expose this." No. His eyes never left Laura, searching for any sign of doubt, but there was none. She nodded, a silent agreement, and turned toward the door. Suddenly, the door to the interrogation room slammed open, and several officers rushed in, led by none other than Officer Thompson. His face was twisted in anger, his hand resting on his gun. "This ends now," he snarled, but there was something in his eyes, something Michael had never seen before: fear. Real, raw fear. It was a regular afternoon when Officer Thompson pulled over a car driven by a black man, but what happened next would change everything. The officer's attitude was anything but professional, his words sharp, his actions cold. He'd seen enough of these types on the streets, or so he thought. As he aggressively placed the man under arrest, he didn't know that the person sitting in that car wasn't just another guy caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. This man, who he'd treated with disdain, was no ordinary citizen. In fact, he wasn't even from around here. The twist? He was a federal prosecutor, a key player in a case that could destroy Officer Thompson's career. What happens when the person you least expect turns out to be the one with all the power? The truth will shock you. Stay tuned. As Officer Thompson cuffed the man, his thoughts were clouded by his own biases, convinced this was just another arrest that would lead to nothing more than paperwork. He had no idea who he was dealing with. Meanwhile, the man in the back seat, now in handcuffs, stayed calm, his eyes locked on the officer with a strange, unreadable expression. For a moment, Officer Thompson felt a twinge of doubt, but he quickly pushed it aside. He'd done his job 1,000 times before. The man, who hadn't fought back or resisted, simply asked for his phone call. What the officer didn't realize was that this wasn't just any call. The prosecutor's voice on the other end of the line wasn't just a lawyer. It was a reminder of the weight of the man he'd just humiliated. Little did Thompson know, the investigation that could bring him down had already begun. As Officer Thompson continued to process the arrest, he was oblivious to the implications of his actions. He didn't know that the man in his custody had connections to a major federal case, one that could expose corruption within their own department. The prosecutor, Michael Davis, was leading an investigation into several officers suspected of misconduct, and Thompson was one of the prime. Before anyone could react, Lara spoke again, this time louder, more authoritative. "No, Thompson. You are the one who's done." She pulled out a file from her jacket, slamming it onto the table in front of him. "You didn't think I was just going to let you get away with it, did you?" Thompson's eyes flickered to the file, and for a brief moment he hesitated. "What is that?" he demanded, his voice trembling. Laura didn't answer. Instead, she turned to Michael and motioned for him to open the file. With a quick, deliberate motion, Michael flipped it open, revealing dozens of documents: phone records, financial statements, evidence of bribery, and most shockingly, a list of names. The names of officers and officials connected to an underground syndicate, laundering money, covering up crimes, and running a web of corruption that stretched far beyond the department. Thompson's name was at the top of the list. Michael stood up, feeling the weight of the moment. "This is it," he said quietly, his voice firm. "You thought you could keep this quiet. Thought you could lock me up and make it disappear. Think again." For a moment, no one moved. Thompson's face turned white as he looked at the incriminating evidence, his mind racing. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Just as Michael thought it was over, a voice came from behind them. "Not so fast." Jenkins, who had been standing quietly in the back, stepped forward, his hands raised in surrender. Michael turned sharply, confused. "What are you doing?" Jenkins' face was pale, but his eyes were clear, determined. I knew something was wrong. I heard the whispers. I didn't want to believe it.